I've always believed that trust is like a house of cards, delicate, intricate, and so easily toppled by a single misstep. For 17 years, I thought Sarah and I had built something sturdier, a fortress of shared dreams, late-night conversations, and promises whispered under starlit skies. We met in college, two awkward kids fumbling through a philosophy class, bonding over our mutual disdain for Nietzsche's pompous prose. She had this laugh, sharp and bright like a bell, that could cut through any gloom. I fell for her before I even knew her last name. By the time we married, 5 years later, I thought I knew every corner of her heart. But hearts, I've learned, have hidden rooms, locked doors, and secrets that fester in the dark. My name is Daniel Harper, and I'm a structural engineer, a man who spends his days ensuring bridges and buildings stand firm against storms and time. Ironic, isn't it, that my own life's foundation would crumble so spectacularly? At 42, I thought I had it all figured out. A solid career, a home in the suburbs of Portland, 2 kids, Emma, 14, and Lucas, 11, and Sarah, my anchor, my muse, my everything. She was a graphic designer, freelancing from home, her creativity spilling into every part of our lives. From the quirky murals on our kids' walls to the way she'd rearrange our furniture on a whim, claiming it refreshed the energy. I loved her spontaneity, her fire, until I realized that fire could burn me too. It started with the small things. The kind you dismiss because you're too busy or too trusting to linger on them. Sarah began staying up later, her laptop glowing in the dark of our living room while I headed to bed. Just finishing a project, she'd say, her voice light but her eyes fixed on the screen, fingers dancing over the keys. I'd kiss her forehead, her hair smelling faintly of lavender, and think nothing of it. Work was her passion, and I was proud of her hustle. But then there were the phone calls she'd take in the backyard, her voice low, her laughter muffled. Client stuff, she'd explain, waving it off. But her smile felt rehearsed, like an actor hitting their mark. The first rail crack appeared in September, 3 months ago. I was on a job site, inspecting a bridge retrofit, when my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Asterisk running late for Emma's soccer game. Can you grab her? Asterisk I frowned. Sarah was meticulous about the kids' schedules, her calendar a color-coded masterpiece. Missing Emma's game was unlike her. I called, but it went to voicemail. I left the site early, drove to the field, and found Emma sitting on the bleachers, her cleats muddy, her face tight with disappointment. "Where's Mom?" she asked, and I had no answer. When Sarah finally showed up, an hour late, her cheeks were flushed, her hair slightly mussed, and she smelled faintly of something unfamiliar. Not lavender, but something sharper, like citrus and musk. "Got held up with a client meeting," she said, avoiding my eyes. I nodded, but the air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside her, listening to her steady breathing, and felt a gnawing unease. It wasn't just the missed game or the vague excuses. It was the way she'd started to pull away, like a tide receding from the shore. Our conversations, once endless, had become clipped, functional. She'd stopped reaching for my hand during movie nights, stopped leaving little notes in my lunch bag. Small gestures that had always tethered us. I told myself it was stress, maybe a rough patch. Marriages have those, don't they? But doubt is a seed, and once planted, it grows roots. I started paying attention. Her phone was always face down now, its screen locked with a new passcode. She'd take it into the bathroom when she showered, an odd habit for someone who used to leave it charging on the kitchen counter. At dinner, she'd check it constantly, her lips twitching into a half-smile at messages I wasn't privy to. I asked her once, casually, who she was texting. "Just a client," she said, too quickly, and changed the subject to Lucas's science project. I didn't push. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband, the one who snoops and accuses. But the seed was sprouting, and I couldn't ignore it. Then came the trip. Sarah announced she needed to attend a design conference in Seattle, a last-minute thing, she said, to network and pitch to a big firm. "It's a game changer, Dan," she told me, her eyes bright with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen in months. I'll be gone 3 days. You'll manage with the kids, right? I agreed, of course. I wanted her to succeed, to chase her dreams. But something about the way she packed, carefully selecting outfits, including a sleek black dress I'd never seen her wear, felt off. She left on a Friday morning, kissing me quickly before rushing out the door, her suitcase bumping against the frame. I stood in the driveway, watching her car disappear, and felt a hollow ache I couldn't name. That weekend, I kept busy with the kids. Emma had another soccer game, Lucas had a robotics club meeting, and I buried myself in their routines to drown out the unease. But on Saturday night, after they were asleep, I did something I'd never done before. I logged into our shared iCloud account, the one we used for family photos and calendars. I told myself I was just checking the calendar, making sure I hadn't missed anything. But my fingers, as if guided by some primal instinct, clicked on the Find My iPhone feature. Sarah's phone pinged, not in Seattle, but in a hotel in downtown Portland, less than 10 miles from our house. My heart thudded, a slow, heavy rhythm. I stared at the blinking dot on the map, my mind racing through explanations. Maybe the conference was local after all? Maybe she'd come back early? But why wouldn't she tell me? Called her, my hands shaking. Voicemail again. I texted. *K. Everything okay? Where are you? No response. I sat there, in the dark of our living room, the same room where we danced to old jazz records and planned our future, and felt the house of cards wobble. By Sunday, she was back, breezing through the door with a tired smile and stories about the conference. Keynote speakers, networking dinners, a really inspiring workshop on typography. I listened, nodding, but her words felt like a script, too polished, too perfect. That night, I waited until she was asleep and slipped out of bed. Her phone was on the nightstand, face down as always. I hesitated, my conscience screaming that this was a violation, a betrayal of trust. But the seed had grown into a vine, choking my reason. I picked up her phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't know her passcode, but I tried her old one. Our anniversary, 061508. It didn't work. I tried Emma's birthday, Lucas's, even her mother's. Nothing. The lock screen mocked me. A photo of us at the beach last summer, all smiles and sunburns. I put the phone down, my hands clammy, and crept back to bed. The next week was torture. Sarah was her usual self, making breakfast, joking with the kids, kissing me goodbye before I left for work, but it felt like a performance. I started noticing things I'd missed before. A new perfume bottle on her vanity, a pair of earrings I didn't recognize, a receipt for a coffee shop I knew she didn't frequent. I became a detective in my own marriage, piecing together clues I didn't want to find. I checked our bank statements, something I rarely did since Sarah handled the finances. There were charges, small but consistent, at places like boutique hotels, upscale restaurants, a lingerie store. Each one was a needle, pricking the bubble of denial I'd been clinging to. I confronted her one evening, after the kids were in bed. We were in the kitchen, dishes stacked in the sink, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. "Sarah?" I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Is there something you're not telling me?" She froze, her hands pausing mid-wipe on a plate. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone light but her eyes guarded. I laid it out, the missed game, the late nights, the locked phone, the hotel ping in Portland. I didn't mention the bank statements. I wanted to see what she'd say. Her face softened, and for a moment, I thought she'd confess, that we'd cry and talk and fix whatever was broken. Instead, she laughed, a brittle sound, and said, "Dan, you're being ridiculous. I'm swamped with work, that's all. The hotel thing? Probably a glitch. You know how buggy that app is." Her dismissal stung more than a confession would have. I wanted to believe her, to cling to the version of us I'd built in my head. But the vine of doubt was too strong. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I installed a tracking app on her phone while she was in the shower, using a moment when she'd left it unlocked to set it up. Felt like crossing a line, but I needed to know. The app showed her movements, her texts, her calls. For a few days, nothing unusual, errands, client meetings, the kids' school. But then, on a Thursday afternoon, while I was at a site inspection, the app pinged. Sarah was at a coffee shop in the Pearl District, one of those trendy places with overpriced lattes. I checked the time. She told me she was working from home all day. I left work early, my pulse racing, and drove to the coffee shop. I parked across the street, feeling like a cliché, a man spying on his wife. Through the window, I saw her, radiant in a green dress, her hair loose and catching the light. She was laughing, leaning across the table toward a man I didn't recognize. He was maybe late 30s, sharply dressed, with a confident smile that made my stomach churn. They weren't touching, but their body language spoke volumes. Intimate, familiar, alive in a way Sarah hadn't been with me in months. I watched, frozen, as she reached out and brushed his hand. A small gesture that shattered something inside me. I didn't confront her then. I drove home, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. That night, she came home late again, claiming a client dinner. I nodded, said nothing, and let the vine of doubt grow into something darker, certainty. Sarah was cheating, and the man in the coffee shop was the key. I didn't know his name yet, but I would. And when I did, I'd make sure this betrayal, this unraveling of everything I thought we were, wouldn't go unanswered. The days after I saw Sarah with that man in the coffee shop were a descent into a kind of quiet madness. I went through the motions, waking the kids, packing lunches, nodding through meetings at work, but my mind was a storm, churning with questions, anger, and a raw, aching need to understand. Who was he? How long had this been going on? And why? What had I missed? What had I failed to give her, that she'd sought it elsewhere? I'm Daniel Harper, a man who builds things to last. Yet here I was, watching my marriage erode like a poorly anchored foundation. The tracking app on Sarah's phone became my obsession, a lifeline to the truth I both craved and dreaded. I didn't confront her right away. Part of me wanted to storm into the kitchen, slam the evidence down, and demand answers. But another part, the engineer in me, needed precision, needed to know the full scope of the betrayal before I acted. I wanted to understand the structure of her deception, every beam and bolt, so I could dismantle it with the same care I'd used to build our life together. So I watched, I waited, and I dug. The app was a window into her world, one she thought was hidden. It logged her locations, her texts, even snippets of her calls if she left the phone near enough to pick up audio. I felt like a ghost in my own marriage, haunting her digital shadow. The coffee shop meeting wasn't a one-off. She went back there twice that week, always in the early afternoon when I was at work and the kids were at school. The man was always there, the same sharp-dressed figure. His face now burned into my memory. I didn't know his name yet, but I started calling him the suit in my head, a placeholder for the enemy I was building in my mind. I started cross-referencing the app's data with our bank statements. The charges I'd noticed before, hotels, restaurants, that lingerie store, aligned with her movements. A boutique hotel downtown, the Archer, showed up repeatedly. I drove by it one evening, a sleek, modern building with tinted windows and a discreet entrance, the kind of place that promised privacy. The app confirmed she'd been there 3 times in the past month, always for a few hours in the afternoon. I sat in my car across the street, staring at the entrance, imagining her walking through it, her arm linked with his, her laughter echoing in a room I'd never see. The image was a knife, twisting deeper with every detail I uncovered. I needed a face, a name, something tangible to anchor my rage. The app gave me locations but not identity. So I went further. One night, while Sarah was asleep, I borrowed her laptop. She'd left it open, a rare lapse, and I accessed her email. I felt like a thief, my heart pounding as I scrolled through her inbox. Most of it was mundane, client briefs, invoices, school newsletters, but then I found a folder labeled Miscellaneous. Inside were emails from an address I didn't recognize, j.martin@outlook.com. The subject lines were vague, checking in, Thursday, miss you. But the content was a gut punch. Asterisk, can't stop thinking about you at the Archer yesterday. You in that dress. Let's make it a regular thing. Asterisk. Asterisk lunch tomorrow? I need to see you again, Sarah. You're under my skin. Asterisk. Asterisk booked the room for next week. Tell Dan it's another conference. He won't suspect. Asterisk. Each word was a brick, building a wall between the Sarah I thought I knew and the woman in these messages. J.C. Martin. That was his name. I Googled it, my fingers trembling. The search yielded too many results, but I narrowed it down with Portland and business. Eventually, I found him, James C. Martin, 38, a marketing consultant with a slick LinkedIn profile. His photo matched the suit. Dark hair, sharp jaw, a smile that screamed confidence. His bio boasted about disrupting the industry and building connections that last. The irony made me want to smash the screen. I dug deeper. His X account was public, a mix of professional jargon and casual charm. He posted about client wins, craft beer, and running marathons. A few weeks back, he'd shared a photo of a sunset from a rooftop bar, the same bar where Sarah had claimed to meet a client. The caption read, asterisk, chasing sunsets and good company. Asterisk, I checked the date. It matched one of her late work nights. My stomach churned, but I kept going, cross-referencing his posts with her movements. The overlap was undeniable. They'd been at the Archer, that rooftop bar, even a weekend trip to the coast she'd passed off as a solo retreat to clear her head. The kids noticed something was off. Emma, my sharp-eyed daughter, asked one night, "Why's Mom so distracted lately?" Lucas, always the optimist, chimed in, "Maybe she's just busy with her art stuff." I forced a smile, ruffled their hair, and changed the subject. But their questions stung. They deserved a mother who was present, a family that was whole. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for them. I started planning. Not revenge, not yet, that would come later, but a way to catch her in the act, to strip away her lies and force the truth into the open. I booked a day off work, telling Sarah I had a site visit out of town. Instead, I parked near the Archer, where the app showed she'd gone again. I waited, my car a cocoon of dread and determination. At 1:17 p.m., she arrived, stepping out of an Uber in a dress I didn't recognize, her hair catching the autumn light. James was there moments later, pulling up in a sleek black Audi. They didn't touch in public, but their smiles, their ease, spoke of a familiarity that made my chest tighten. I followed them inside, keeping my distance, my baseball cap pulled low. The hotel lobby was all glass and marble, a sterile elegance that felt like a stage for their deceit. They headed to the elevators, and I lingered by the bar, pretending to check my phone. The app confirmed they were on the 5th floor, room 512. I imagined confronting them, bursting into the room, seeing the shock on their faces. But I didn't. I needed more than a scene. I needed a plan that would hurt as much as this betrayal did. That night, Sarah came home late, her cheeks flushed, her story about a client meeting rehearsed to perfection. I played along, asking about her day, nodding as she spun her lies. But inside, I was building something new. Not a bridge or a building, but a reckoning. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of her texts, emails, the app's location logs. I contacted a lawyer, discreetly, to understand my options. Divorce was a possibility, but it felt too clean, too easy. Sarah had broken something sacred, and I wanted her to feel the weight of it, to lose something as precious as what she'd taken from me. I learned more about James. He was married, too, with a wife named Claire and a 6-year-old daughter. His ex-posts showed a curated life, family vacations, date nights, a man who played the part of devoted husband while sneaking around with mine. The hypocrisy fueled my anger, but it also gave me an idea. Claire deserved to know, didn't she? I found her on social media, a cheerful woman with a kind smile, her posts full of gardening tips and book recommendations. I wondered if she suspected anything, if she felt the same unease I had. I drafted a message, anonymous, with just enough detail to plant the seed. Asterisk, your husband, James Martin, is meeting another woman at the Archer Hotel. Check his phone. Asterisk, I didn't send it, not yet. It was a card I'd hold, a lever to pull when the time was right. The kids kept me grounded. Emma's soccer games, Lucas's robotics projects, they were my anchor, my reason to keep moving forward. But even they couldn't fill the void Sarah's betrayal had carved out. I started sleeping in the guest room, claiming I was working late and didn't want to disturb her. She didn't question it, which only deepened the wound. Our marriage was a ghost now, haunting the house we'd built together. I hired a private investigator, a grizzled man named Tom who'd seen too many stories like mine. He didn't judge, just took my money and promised results. Within a week, he had photos, Sarah and James at the coffee shop, the hotel, even a park where they'd walked, her head on his shoulder. The images were clinical, detached, but they burned. Tom also dug into James's life. He wasn't just a cheater. He had a history, complaints from former clients about shady business deals, whispers of other affairs. He was a man who thrived on secrets, and Sarah had fallen for his charm. I started mapping out my revenge. It wasn't enough to expose them, to walk away with a divorce and half our assets. I wanted them to lose everything, their reputations, their families, their sense of security. I began with small moves. I tipped off a local business blog about James's questionable deals, using an anonymous email. The post went live a week later, subtle but damaging, enough to make his clients pause. I saw the worry in his ex-posts, a shift from cocky to defensive. Good. Let him squirm. For Sarah, I was more careful. I didn't want her to suspect I knew. Not yet. I started planting doubts, subtle ones. I'd mention a new perfume I liked on her, knowing it was his. I'd ask about her day with just enough edge to make her falter. She'd laugh it off, but I saw the cracks. Her glances at her phone, the way she'd jump when I walked into a room. She was nervous, and that was the first step. I wasn't proud of what I was becoming. A man consumed by vengeance, a shadow of the husband who'd once believed in forever. But Sarah had lit this fire, and James had fanned the flames. They'd built their little world of lies, thinking I'd never see. Now I saw everything, and I was ready to tear it down, brick by brick, until they had nothing left to hide behind. The air in our house felt like a held breath, heavy with the weight of truths unspoken. For weeks, I'd been a shadow in my own life, a man named Daniel Harper who went to work, kissed his kids goodnight, and smiled at his wife while plotting her downfall. Sarah's betrayal with James Martin wasn't just a crack in our marriage. It was a chasm, and I decided to fill it with consequences. The evidence I'd gathered, texts, emails, photos, the private investigator's reports, was a blueprint for destruction, and I was ready to build something new from the ruins. Justice, sharp and unforgiving. I'd spent months laying the groundwork, moving pieces into place like an engineer designing a collapse. The anonymous tip about James's shady business dealings had sparked a slow bleed, clients pulling back, whispers in Portland's tight-knit marketing scene. His ex-posts grew frantic, veiled rants about haters and misunderstandings. I watched from the sidelines, a ghost in his digital life, knowing this was just the prelude. For Sarah, I'd been subtler, sowing seeds of unease with my questions, my feigned ignorance. She was unraveling, her lies fraying at the edges. She'd started checking her phone obsessively, jumping at sudden noises, her laughter forced. Good. Let her feel the walls closing in. The final act began on a crisp November morning, 2 months after I'd first seen them together at the coffee shop. I'd chosen the date carefully. Emma and Lucas were at a weekend robotics camp, leaving the house empty except for Sarah and me. She thought I was at a site inspection, but I'd taken the day off, my plan a tightly coiled spring ready to release. The private investigator, Tom, had delivered one last piece of evidence the night before. A video from the Archer Hotel's lobby, showing Sarah and James entering an elevator, her hand in his, their smiles conspiratorial. It was the final nail, and I was ready to hammer it in. I started with Claire, James's wife. I'd held on to that anonymous message for weeks, refining it until it was a scalpel. Using a burner email, I sent it at 8 a.m. Asterisk, your husband, James Martin, has been meeting Sarah Harper at the Archer Hotel for months. Check his phone, his emails. Room 512 is their usual. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Asterisk, I attached a single photo from Tom's collection, James and Sarah at the rooftop bar, her head tilted toward him, their intimacy undeniable. I didn't sign it, didn't need to. Claire would do the rest. By noon, the ripple effects were visible. I'd hacked into Sarah's iCloud again, monitoring her texts in real time through the tracking app. A flurry of messages from James lit up her phone. Asterisk, Claire's freaking out. She found something. Call me ASAP. Asterisk, Sarah's reply was panicked. Asterisk, what? How? I'm at home. Dan's at work. What do we do? Asterisk, James. Asterisk, don't text. Meet me. Archer. Now. Asterisk, I watched the app's map as Sarah's moved downtown, right to the hotel. Predictable. I grabbed my keys and followed, my pulse steady, my mind clear. This wasn't about catching them anymore. It was about orchestrating their exposure. I arrived at the Archer but stayed outside, parked across the street. I didn't need to go in. Tom was already there, tipped off by me, ready to capture whatever unfolded. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Claire. I'd included a burner number in the email, anticipating she might reach out. Asterisk, who are you? Why are you telling me this? Asterisk, I didn't respond. Instead, I waited. Minutes later, the app showed Sarah's phone still in the hotel, but a new message from James. Asterisk, Claire's here. She followed me. Get out now. Asterisk, chaos was unfolding, and I hadn't even stepped inside. Tom's call came at 1:15 p.m. It's a mess in there, he said, his voice gruff but tinged with amusement. Wife showed up, screaming in the lobby. Your wife bolted out the back, but the guy's still trying to talk his way out. Got it all on video. I thanked him, hung up, and drove home. The next phase was mine to execute. Sarah returned at 3 p.m., her face pale, her hair disheveled. She tried to play it off, saying she'd been at a client meeting that got heated. I nodded, pouring her a glass of wine, my voice calm. Rough day, I asked, watching her hands shake as she took the glass. You could say that, she muttered, avoiding my eyes. I let the silence stretch, a noose tightening. Then I said, I know about James, Sarah. Her head snapped up, her lips parting, but no words came. I didn't give her time to spin a lie. I pulled out my laptop, already open to a slideshow I'd prepared. Screenshots of their emails, texts, the hotel charges, Tom's photos, the video of them in the lobby. Each image was a blow, and I watched her crumple, her wine glass trembling in her hand. Dan, she started, but I cut her off. Don't. I've known for months. Every lie, every meeting, every time you came home smelling like him. My voice was steel, honed by weeks of rage. She started to cry, apologies spilling out. Asterisk, it was a mistake. She was lonely. It didn't mean anything, asterisk. But I didn't care. Her tears were too late, a performance for a curtain already closed. I told her to pack a bag and leave. The kids don't need to see this, I said. You can stay at your sister's until we figure out what's next. She begged, clutching my arm. But I pulled away, the man who loved her buried under the weight of her betrayal. She left that night, her suitcase bumping against the doorframe, an echo of her departure for that fake Seattle conference. I sat in the living room, the house too quiet, and felt no relief, only a hollow resolve. This wasn't the end. Sarah's pain was personal, but James's was public, and I wasn't done with him. The next morning, I sent another anonymous email, this time to James's top clients, his business partners, even his marathon running club. I attached Tom's photos, the video, and a detailed account of his affair, framed as a concerned colleague, exposing his lack of integrity. I used a VPN, a trick Tom had taught me to keep it untraceable. By noon, X was buzzing with vague posts about trust in business and personal accountability, hints that the email had hit its mark. James's LinkedIn went private, his X account silent. I imagined him scrambling, his polished life cracking like thin ice. I didn't stop there. I contacted a lawyer, laying out the evidence for a divorce and full custody of Emma and Lucas. Oregon's no-fault laws meant I couldn't use the affair directly, but the paper trail showed Sarah's neglect. Missed games, late pickups, her time spent with James instead of our kids. My lawyer, a shark named Ellen, was confident. "She'll fight, but we've got leverage," she said. I also tipped off a local gossip blog, feeding them just enough to run a blind item about a local marketing guru and a freelance designer caught in a scandal. It was petty, but it stung, and I wanted them to feel it. Claire was my final move. I met her a week later, at a quiet diner, no longer anonymous. She was weary, her eyes red-rimmed, but strong. She'd kicked James out, hired a lawyer, and was rebuilding. I told her everything, how I'd found out, what I'd done. She didn't judge, just nodded, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug. "He's lost his job," she said. "Clients dropped him after those emails. He's crashing with a friend, begging me to take him back." I felt a grim satisfaction. James's empire of lies was rubble, and I'd helped swing the wrecking ball. The kids were the hardest part. When they came home from camp, I sat them down, keeping it simple. "Mom and I are taking some time apart. She loves you, but we need to figure things out." Emma cried. Lucas asked if it was his fault, and I held them, promising we'd be okay. Sarah called them daily, but I limited her visits, needing space to rebuild our family's foundation. She moved into a small apartment, her design career stalling as the gossip spread. Her ex-posts, once vibrant, stopped. She was a ghost now, too, haunted by her choices. Months later, the divorce was finalized. I got the house, primary custody, and a sense of closure, though the scars remained. James's life imploded. His business tanked. His marriage ended. His reputation shredded. I didn't gloat, didn't need to. The wreckage spoke for itself. I'm rebuilding now, for Emma, for Lucas, for myself. The house feels lighter, the air less stifling. I've started coaching Emma's soccer team, teaching Lucas to code. We're finding our rhythm, a new structure rising from the ashes. Trust is still a house of cards, but I'm learning to build again, card by card, with no hidden rooms. Sarah and James taught me that love can betray, but it's the aftermath, the choices you make in the ruins, that define you. And I choose to stand tall, unbowed. A man who faced the storm and walked through it, stronger for it.